Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TEPSA Presents. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership here at the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. We are thrilled twice a month to bring you a variety of topics that we can provide for you to learn about all kinds of things. You can check out all of the past recordings on our YouTube page, on our website, or on our podcast, TEPSA Talk, available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Remember, you can join twice a month. This week, though, my special guest will be talking about legislation, and this is huge. But I'm so excited to have Mark Terry on with me. Mark, thanks for joining us. If they don't know who you are for some reason, can I introduce yourself for me?
Okay, I'm Mark Terry. I'm the Deputy Executive Director here at TEPSA. It's good
Mark,
to be here.
And Mark is the go-to guy when we start talking legislative stuff because he is all over that. And so when I thought about some good TEPSA Presents episode, knowing that we are in the middle of a legislative season and there's a lot happening, I figured this would be a really timely thing because honestly, before coming to work at TEPSA myself, I did not even really understand the importance or the value of any of this. And so I guess first, Mark, I want to start out and talk about, let's just start with the beginning. And as an administrator or as an educator, why should I even care what's happening in the legislature?
Well, one of the things, Todd, and thank you for having this talk about legislation. I mean, it's kind of boring unless you're kind of a policy wonk. And as a principal, you didn't go into being a principal to be working with the legislature and influencing laws and legislation. But as an administrator, you have a commitment to your profession, and everything that goes on in the Capitol impacts your profession. It impacts kids in your building. It impacts your community. It impacts your teachers. It impacts when you retire. So if you aren't involved, then you're letting people who don't know anything about education impact what we're teaching our kids. And I think the way we use STAR, or the way that the state wants us to use STAR, is a perfect example. It's a test that's manufactured and required by non-educators. And if we had our druthers, we'd use STAR for diagnostics. That's not what it's used for. So it impacts you and your kids and your communities.
And so, as an administrator, I think though, like I've got so many things on my plate, and that's so, politics is so foreign to me. Now, yes, as administrators, we pretty much are politicians and we have to learn how to politic in our own way. So we get that side of things. But, I look at it as it's a big machine. I'm just one person. I don't make a difference. But I know that one of the benefits of being a member of TEPSA is TEPSA does do advocating on the part of its members. So it can bring something to the legislative branches and say, hey, this many members want us to talk about this. Talk to me a little bit about why does TEPSA have a part in that, and why is that good for me?
I think that our members demand that TEPSA be on top of these laws, because right now I'm looking at 2,399 House bills. That's just the House bills. And you have to read through those, find out what it means, find out how it impacts you as an administrator, and then advocate. Well, there's no way you can do that. As a principal, you're working. So you have an association that has people like me that look at the legislation, who communicate the legislation, then we communicate how it's going to impact you. And then sometimes we ask you to come and we ask you to testify. And I'm telling you, legislators are scared of you. They are scared of elementary school principals because, number one, you can't be insulted. I mean, really. I mean, I was an elementary principal for 25 years. You can't be insulted. And they try to do that. They try to demean you. They try to trick you up if you go testify. We ain't having any of that. This is what happens to my school. Come and visit. Oh, you haven't been? Well, come and visit right now, and I'll show you what's going on, how great my school is, and then some of our challenges. But as administrators, y'all want somebody to kind of give you the clue about what to do. And I just had a principal in here last week. I took her over to see the speaker. What am I going to say? I said, you don't have to say anything because he's going to be falling all over to get to you. And he was. He spent about 45 minutes with us, asked us all kind of questions. She wasn't stumped at all. And when she got through, she said, that was really easy. And it's very easy to do. And you have a lot of power.
See, there's two things you said there that I love. As a principal, I loved getting the updates from TEPSA about
Mhm.
what kind of things were happening that I need to keep an eye out. Because, like you said, I didn't have time to watch about that,
No.
but I also didn't understand half what they were saying half the time. So it really helped to get those emails from TEPSA
Mhm.
to say, hey, these kind of things are happening in the legislature. Here's
Yep.
ways that you can get involved. But I also love that as an association, we don't go and do the speaking for people. Like you just
Yep.
said, you bring in
Mhm.
active administrators to do the talking because the legislators, many of them, if not all of them, have not been public educators. So
Yep.
when you make a decision for a public education, you've never been there. Oftentimes we find a disconnect in some of
Yeah.
those decisions. And so, I have people who might be listening today going, this is all great. I'm fired up. I want to do something to help out. What
Amen.
can people do to kind of help their voices be heard, but also help the mission of educators
Yep.
across the state?
Well, really, it's really easy. It's developing relationships with your legislator, number one. Well, let's first say, call me. Call me 512-650-6286. It's all over. Just go to TEPSA and you get a hold of me. I'm telling you, I could get you here. I could coach you. We can visit your legislator. But the way you start at first is you make a relationship. So you just Google who represents me. And it's going to pop up. You put in your zip code, not in your area code or your zip code. Yeah, your zip code, not only to your house, but to your school. And it's going to pop up who represents you. And then you just write them a card. Congratulations on being elected. I'd love you to visit my school. I'll have the press here, or I'll have my district PIO here, or I want you to read to my kids. You will get a response. And then you start telling them about your school. Many of these legislators haven't been in school since they graduated. They have not visited a school, yet they're making decisions that impact you every day. So get them in your school. Then when they have a question, then they have somebody to call. And you call them all the time. You write them, you email them. Hey, you tweet their stuff. Tweet something good. Always tweet something good. 5 things good, and then you kind of poke them a little bit, and then they'll respond. But they're real easy. They're just like parents. Most of them are parents, and
Yeah.
you can make those relationships and start right away. And then you call me, and I'll get you involved. I'll get you talking, and I'll connect you, especially with our text message system that'll alert you to bills and stuff like that.
So there's so many things you said there, Mark, that I want people to hear. First of all, Mark did say call him and gave his phone
Yes.
number. And you may be thinking, oh, yeah, Mark really means call me. No, Mark really
Yes.
means to call him if you want
Yes.
to get involved. And I can promise you, he will answer it. He will respond back to the
Yep.
text, the email. It doesn't matter. Mark,
Yep.
you are great at that.
Yeah.
But something else you said, you mentioned that all you have to do is Google who represents me. And I didn't even know that. Like you told me that
Yep.
before we went live, and I thought it cannot be that easy. And literally, it's the first thing that pops up whenever you do it.
Yep.
And now I know who represents
Yep.
me, who sits in for my area on the State Board of Education, all that kind of stuff. I had no idea about that. But the other thing that you said there that I thought was really important for people to hear is sometimes we sit back as educators and administrators and we complain that people
Yes.
aren't coming to our school. They don't listen to what's happening, but we've never invited them.
Right.
And so let's take down one of those excuses and just pound
Yep.
them like crazy to come see the things going on. Email, call, whatever. Put on your calendar once a week to email once a week things that are, include them on your school newsletter, like whatever. I think that is a great way, but you also mentioned something else that you do an excellent job of. Before the pandemic, when you were visiting schools like crazy,
Yeah.
you would always tweet about what those schools were doing, and you always tagged the mayor, the superintendent, and the legislator for that area. And that's when I started thinking, gosh, as a principal, we're sharing stuff on social media. That's easy to just tag your legislator because it's not a political thing. They literally were elected to represent you. So you're not going to cross any lines or anything, but it's a great way that they can't claim to not know what's happening in public school education when we are flooding their system with look at all the great stuff. Now, have you ever gotten any response from any legislators by you tagging them in tweets and stuff?
All the time. All the time. In fact, one time, my daughter, who's a first grade teacher, she invited her legislator to Zoom read to her class. He was Zoom reading. She takes a picture. She tags him, and he responded right away. He
Wow.
tweeted it. He talks about it all the time. But so now when she goes to the legislature, she goes right in to see him. There's no pause. In fact, if you really want to see a legislator, you come visit me and bring a kindergarten or first grade teacher. I guarantee you they will see you. But also, here's another thing. Be kind.
Yeah.
Brag on them. Thank them. They're making $7,000 a year. That's what they get paid. So they're taking a hit in their business when they go down to the Capitol. Right. So thank them. Thank them for what they do.
You know, and I think that's important to remember too. You know, these elected officials for our state who are making all these decisions for public education, you know, we may not agree with their choices, but what's that saying? It's always easier with honey than with vinegar to attract somebody in. Yep. And so I think you make such a great point is instead of like writing them hate messages, I can't believe you voted for this, you don't deserve to be in that position, whatever. I think that's a perfect opportunity to say, hey, thank you for representing our area. We're doing this. Come be a part here. We want to invite you to this thing. Or, you know what? I know you're busy. We have virtual options of ways where you can record something and send it and we'll play it for our kids. And don't let it be a one and done thing. Just continue. So Mark, I'd love to know, when you were an administrator, were you involved in this side of things, or was it more when you came to work for TEPSA?
Well, you know, it's funny. In 1995 was I'm old, okay? In 1995, I was an assistant principal. It was my first, no, I was a principal, but yeah, it was my first meeting with TEPSA. I was put on a committee. And so I went to see the Capitol. That was my first time. And I went to see a guy at Kent Grusendorf, who was real anti-public ed. I walk into his office. I say, hi, I'm Mark Terry. I'm a principal. And he's like, says a swear word, tells me to get out. He doesn't want to talk to me. I leave, and I got about 4 steps. I said, wait a minute. He's my rep. So I walked back in there, got in a big argument with him, got kicked out. But that started the fever. That started the fever because we organized at the next election and elected him out. And we had a new representative at that time. And that's when I realized the power that principals have. People look to you for answers. They look for you on how they should act. They look for you on what bills that should be. I mean, when you get involved, parents notice and they look to you for leadership. And that's kind of when I got started, was getting thrown out of Kent Grusendorf's office.
Now, you know, we called this episode, I should have called it, listen, come here, Mark's time getting kicked out, because that's amazing. But we called this, you know, legislative updates too. So fill me in. What's some of the big stuff happening right now that we need to keep an eye on as administrators and educators?
Well, like I said, there's 1,000 bills. There's going to be like 4,000 to 5,000 bills. Not near those will get there. So some of the ones you want to watch for are the budget bills. The first budget, House Bill 3, we just got it about a week ago, and us, TEPSA, and like organizations have been working on that, calling our legislators because there were 2 vouchers in that bill. And so we organized people. They started calling the writer of the bill. Today we heard that he's taken those 2 vouchers out, but we'll have to keep watching that. So the budget is very important because, you know, this has been a weird year. Yeah. Other things that are going to come down the pike or COVID relief, safety protocols, all kinds of stuff that could be onerous to principals, even like making sure you find your kids. One of the things that I have gotten upset about some of the legislators about is that we're not looking for kids. I said, you got to be kidding me. They're elementary school principals. They are looking for kids. So look for some of those bills that maybe have something to do with that. There's a ton of special education bills. So we'll be watching those for you. And some of those can be onerous. But I just happen to have a few little bills that could impact you and you wouldn't even know it. One is called custodian workload. They want to limit what you could do with your custodians, how they should work, when they should work, what they should do. Now think about that. I don't think you're overworking your custodian, but do you want Austin to tell you how to work with your custodian? No, it's silly. There's another one. It's a restraint prohibition bill. Now this one we fought last year. I went and talked to the legislator about it, and the restraint It gives you definitions for restraint that you cannot do. Well, one of them, the last session, was timeout. Now, give me a break.
Yeah.
My daughters, and I went and talked to him. I said, my daughter teaches first grade. She sends a kid over to the corner. You're in timeout. Is that a restraint? Yes. I said, well, she can still see the lesson. She's just sitting right there. Is that a restraint? Yes, that's a restraint. So some of these bills, the language they use can impact you greatly. Also, I would probably look for some charter bills. They're really wanting to tighten up on charters and vouchers. So that's good. We don't want any vouchers. And we want to kind of limit the damage that our communities are seeing with the overproliferation of charters. And then there's other just flaky bills, but mainly budget, special ed, and things that take up principals' time. One thing we're working on is the reading academies. You know that during this time, the reading academies have been very difficult because they're long and difficult and you're having a time frame. Well, we're working with the legislature to try to give some flexibility on that. In fact, we're working with Northwest ISD in writing a bill that would give the district some flexibility to train people that need it. But then our master teachers and our master principals, they don't have to have the same kind of training. So those are some of the things that we're kind of looking at. The beauty is that we have ERCOT, PUC, oil and gas, wind and solar are getting raked over the coals. So they're kind of ignoring all the other bills and tearing these guys up, which is really good. Because
the
fewer bills, the better.
Well, there's so many things there too that stuck out to me, what you just said. First of all, I love how you started that section and saying, what I think people may not realize is when TEPSA goes with a letter to the legislators, a lot of the times it's with 10 other organizations and they're all on the letter. And I love that different organizations and associations here in the state that represent public education can come together to have one voice against some of these really crazy bills that are out there, the wording of them. But, as I hear you talk about some of those, I start to get like anxiety, like, oh my gosh, there's so many changes that can come. But what I will say is that's the benefit of being a member of TEPSA.
Yes.
Is if there are bills that are passed that are going to affect you, we will notify you and help fill in the holes. So if you're thinking, I am a member, but I haven't gotten anything legislative related, or I don't know where that went, let me know. Let Mark know. We'll figure out why you didn't get the email, and we will clear that up. Because I think, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, we just sent out one with all the legislative information. I think it may have been this week, honestly. But I think, that's what's great about being a part of this association is not only do you have somebody that has your back, but you also have an association who's filling you in and who's letting you know these changes are coming. Here's ways that you can be involved. And so, Mark, there have been so many things talked about in this episode, but if people are going to leave with one thing, what do you want them to leave with?
I would want you to realize the power that an elementary school principal has, or any kind of principal has, or an educator. You have a profession that needs to be honored, and you have a lot of power, and you need to let your legislators, you need to let lawmakers, you need to let your mayor, everybody know what a great job you're doing for kids. And you are doing a great job. I visited hundreds of schools. I would send my kid to any of them. That's what I would want them to know.
I love that. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in, whether you're watching this live or you're checking out the recording later on our podcast or YouTube page. There's so many ways for you to use your voice, get connected, influence legislative decisions just by showing how awesome your school is. So check out all the stuff Mark shared. If you have any other questions or any other ways that you want to get involved, message Mark. You can call him. You can email him, mark@tepsa.org. Trust me, we are always looking for additional volunteers. So if you don't know how to get involved, you just know you want to be involved, let Mark know, and he will find the perfect spot to plug you in. And so thank you, Mark, for being on here. You are the go-to guy with this. You do such a good job representing administrators and educators across the state. So I personally appreciate all of the work that you do, because it is not my forte. And I'm so glad there are people with strengths like you who take and run with that. And thank you, everybody, for checking out another episode. Join us again in 2 weeks. You can check out all the past episodes on our YouTube page, in our Facebook videos, or on our podcast, TEPSA Talk.